who's the Senior Manager for Communications and Marketing for PanSALB. It's Human Rights Month, Human Rights Week, and Human Rights Day. So welcome to Indigenous Languages Action Forum Conversations. Today we are having a conversation with PanSALB. Representative here is Ntombi Huluhulu, who is the Senior Manager for Communications and Marketing for PanSALB. It's Human Rights Month, Human Rights Week, and Human Rights Day. So we thought the perfect person to tell us about our language rights in South Africa would be PanSALB, and specifically Ntombi because she specializes in communication, and people who specialize in communication have a way of giving us information in a way that we can all understand. So please tell us anything you'd like to tell us. What does PanSALB exist for? And thank you so much for making time to be with us.
Well, thank you, Siki. Thank you for the invite, to your platform. Well, basically, maybe let me start with what PanSALB is. PanSALB is a constitutional body that is mandated with the promotion of all official languages in the country, and all, including any other languages that are commonly spoken by South African communities. So essentially, that is what we do. As you know, we have 12 official languages in the country, but also the Constitution also recognizes Yoko and San languages. And so we're quite happy that, South African Sign Languages, just recently became one of our official languages. So essentially, in a nutshell, that is what PanSALB does. As it relates to language rights, one of the key things to note is really just around how the South African Constitution allows for South Africans to participate in public life as well as in their private life, using their own languages. I'll give you an example. If you go to a government department, you have a right to request information in your own language, and government is actually obligated to ensure that information is provided in that language. You have a right, when you go to, say, SAPS, when you are writing a statement, you have a right to write it in your own language. And I think you would have seen a couple of days ago, we're having some reports around a, particular police stations maybe having gotten a circular that said people can only write their statements in English, which is in part, it really is not within the spirit of what the Constitution advances. So maybe let me just leave it there and allow you.
Thank you very much. So if people have complaints about not being able to use their languages, can they complain to PanSALB, and what does PanSALB do?
Well, we have a linguistic human rights section within the institution, which is headed by a Mr. Jeffrey Nkuna. That unit specifically deals with complaints such as the one that I just made an example of. So if, for example, you have any LHR violation, the information is available on our website. There is an LHR form that you fill in, you submit to PanSALB, and we institute an investigation. And obviously, we then come up with recommendations that would be in line within the framework of the Constitution, obviously, which strongly supports multilingualism. So with you speaking your language and me speaking my language, there are other language services that we can use, to facilitate communication. There's translators, there's interpreters. So the Constitution actually has laid the groundwork to ensure that we are able to exercise our language rights.
So even in places where someone goes and their language is not recognized, they can complain with PanSALB and lay a complaint.
We do get complaints. For example, I think we've had in previous years someone who, say, for example, trying to get assistance maybe from an insurance company. And you just, obviously, these are very important decisions that you must make about your life. but you find that the information is in English only. And we know that, Snabantu Badala, who must access this information, who must know what they're signing. So it's very important that you look out for yourself, first of all, because some of these things actually are a barrier to economic opportunities. If you don't have the information in a language that you are actually comfortable with, most of us, you read, you're like, oh, this is, sometimes English, and you're like, okay, I don't even understand what this is anymore. You're just signing. So it is quite important that we try and take, we try by all means, wherever you are, try and request that information. I think this is one of the ways that as individuals, we can actually help advance our language rights. Try and request that. Can I have that? Particularly within a government institution, there is absolutely no reason why you can go to a government institution and be told that no, the information is only available in English. The government is required by law to provide this information in all the different languages that South Africans speak.
Including institutions of learning and other places.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. You would have seen that the Department of Basic Education just rolled out nationally a mother tongue based bilingual education, which is a great and positive step for the country. Now it's been rolled out, I think, nationally. I think it was piloted in Eastern Cape a few years ago, and with much, great success. So obviously, we are now moving towards the direction of decolonizing education within our country. Obviously, there's also the question of what then, when you introduce the mother tongue based bilingual education at basic education level, what happens then when they get to, universities? That's where a language policy framework for higher institutions. Now, all those universities have to start implementing those recommendations, or they need to start developing language policies that actually are aligned with the constitution, but also they need to ensure that the demographics of wherever that institution is operating in is taken into consideration. I think you would have seen earlier last week, I think, that EU City, I think they launched it on the 21st or somewhere there in Feb, their language policy, which includes isiXhosa now. So that's a great step. This is what we expect from all other universities, because although it is not going to be a change that happens overnight, of course, but we are working towards ensuring that we slowly but surely put value to our languages.
Thank you very much. So now, could you tell us about some of the language developments that have been done, especially concerning the minority languages and like the Khoi languages, and and also what other minority languages are you looking at besides the Khoi languages and new that we know about?
Okay. Well, obviously, the first one, maybe let me just talk. I think I briefly touched on this one. South African Sign Language is also one of those languages that were completely marginalized. It is now official. So we asked it, but it doesn't mean that the work stops, or just because it is now official. In fact, recently we just had a celebration of language and culture with South Africans, with the deaf community. So one of the things that we want to do is to ensure that the South African Sign Language gets into the mainstream. I mean, kids in school should be able to learn South African Sign Language. It really is a more of a drive for social inclusion, ensuring that there is social cohesion, that the deaf community can actually communicate with their own families, with their own communities. Because right now, if you and I cannot sign, then it means even if we have a family member, it means we cannot relate to them. That is one of the things that we want to actually address as an institution. And then
about sign though, there are a lot of people say that they're struggling to find that sometimes I get questions about where can they learn to sign, and sometimes with my context in the sign of people specialize in sign, they usually communicate quite a lot of difficulties. Like, for example, I'd ask for videos, of sign, and they really say it's really difficult. And kind of explaining all the different things that we don't think about,
Mm.
that keep them from being able to just produce a video. So for us, it's like, okay, you just produce a video. But for them, there's so many other steps that are required, which then makes it difficult for me to find resources that are helpful because we'd like to include all languages, when we're communicating. Could you just touch on, do you have resources for sign, or where can people get, because some people, they want to learn. I've had a lot of
Mm.
requests.
Various institutions actually that offer, some of them actually have like free lessons online. I think one that I can think of the top of my head is NID, National Institute for the Deaf. I think though we also have some links, like I think on our website, but you know what we can do is maybe just to provide you with some of the apps maybe that are available out there. I think there's also a dictionary that was launched with the NID. So, I mean, there are some resources that are available for people to learn.
Okay.
And one of the things that we were also doing as an institution is actually going to communities and teaching the families and, families, parents and families of deaf children to ensure that they're able to, communicate with them. Because it's one of the saddest thing you'll ever hear. During COVID, we found that deaf kids actually felt very, very isolated because they were not going to school. One, they're at home, they can't communicate with anybody. You find your parent cannot sign. They maybe they
Wow.
can do base. I'm telling you, it is very, very sad to be honest with you. But these are some of the initiatives that really we need to zoom in on and make sure that we try and scale them and ensure that we cover everybody and we bring everyone on board.
And I had cut you off on the languages.
With the on the
Yes,
Khoi and
the
San languages,
Korean
yes.
and
So that
other minority languages that are not spoken about, that
mm,
don't have majority speakers, that we don't might not even know some of them, that they even exist.
mm. I heard there was this phrase that was used by one of the community members of the Khoi and San community. He said, you know, because we had community language schools that we were running, right? And then referring to that initiative, saying, we're happy that you are working on any initiative that is actually going to put the languages to the tongue of most Khoi and San communities. And I liked that because, most of those communities, they've lost their languages, right? So now obviously the effort you're putting there cannot be the same as, say, for example, isiXhosa. It's not a well developed language, but, there have been some strides. So you have languages, for example, like the Ngu language, which, as you know, only has one fluent speaker, Oma Katrina.
Katrina. Mm.
Yes. So we are working very closely with Oma Katrina and, trying to capture as much as we can of the language. And in fact, just last week, we were recording for the talking dictionary. So I think we are moving towards finalizing that. So we're
Wow,
also
talking dictionary. That's fun.
Yes, it's a talking dictionary. And so you will have a voice that will teach you how to say the words that are within that dictionary. So it's quite an exciting project, which is coming now, is nearing an end. So we are quite
Wow.
excited. We're really excited about that. But of course, there are a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders that we work with, of course, with the communities themselves. Because one of the things that PanSALB believes is that you cannot develop a language that is not being used. And now that is very crucial. That is very, very crucial in that the communities themselves need to
Yes,
take the effort to actually
yes,
use the languages.
yes. Because for a language to exist, it needs a community with, and the culture.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the language is also about culture. Any other languages that we don't speak about, that you do look at, that are minority languages?
Not mainly, the main part of what we do really when it comes to minority languages is within, of course, that Khoi and San, group. So a lot of the work that we
Oh,
do
so
is
that's all.
really
So
focused
you
there.
only so
Yeah,
you
when
only
when it
look at
comes to the
Khoi and San.
sorry,
So you
sorry.
only look at Khoi and San languages that are minority language. You don't look at other because you know there are other minority languages like Lozi and like a lot of other
Like,
lesser
is
known
Ishubi,
languages.
for an example, is are those languages, is it those languages that you're talking about?
Yes, and maybe I feel I know about this trivia because it just, but there are other
Hmm.
lesser known groups.
Lesser known groups. Yeah, well, you know what? The Constitution actually protects all languages that are spoken within South Africa. I think that is why, that section is there to say if a language is being spoken in a particular community, that language is protected by the Constitution. I think maybe let me just give you an example. There is, I don't know if you know, in Ilusigisiki, they speak Isimpond in that area. So to some, it is very similar to isiXhosa, but it is a
Yeah.
different language. You find that then this is then expressed, that recognition is expressed through, say, for an example, I know that MDDA, which we have recently just partnered with, they have a radio station, they'll have a community radio station that will actually allow expression in languages such as that. So I think they do find expression somewhere, they do
Mm,
find expression somewhere. And I think the most important thing is to ensure that each community feels included. Each
mm.
community feels that their languages do find expression
Yes,
in
I
their
think
life.
I found another one in Mpumalanga that I recently heard about. But
Mm.
it's okay. We don't have to talk about that one. But I just want to say thank you so much for your time. And just any last words about language rights, please feel free to add as we close.
Okay, all right. I think one of the most important things that I would really just like to point out, which I think is very important, is the advocacy that is required for the rollout of the mother tongue based bilingual education. And I think it is quite worrying sometimes when you hear people saying, how is my child going to learn in isiXhosa? I think it's very important that we try and educate ourselves about what that mother tongue based bilingual education is, because it's not doing away with English. In fact, it is just adding so that there is a bit more comprehension for children. So for us, our efforts really are towards ensuring that this is rolled out in a way that people actually understand, that they can be more receptive to it.
Well, thank you so much for your time and thank you for your work.
Thank you
And
so much.
people can easily just go to PanSALB websites, social media to learn more about PanSALB. Thank you so much, Ntombi. Have a wonderful Human Rights Week.
Thank you, Siki.
Bye.
Bye.